Hi everyone, let's start our first lesson on video. This is your lesson number 1 and let's take some notes. The other day I mentioned something that is called a cell. A cell is the intersection of a column and a row. So for example, if we have the column C and the row 5 where those two intersect, we would have the cell that we would reference with the cell address of that box that we call a cell, and it would be C5. We always start with a letter and we continue with a number. So C5 is what we call a cell reference, meaning that that's what we would use if we wanted to reference the value that is stored into that cell. That's why I have a question mark. We don't know what is stored into that cell. Now, what is it that we can store into that cell? What we type in the cell is called the content of the cell, and it can be one of 5 different things. So what we type inside, we are going to say that it has a data type, meaning what category of content we have typed in. So cell content, we define it as what is typed inside the cell, and it can be one of 5 different things. And depending on what we spell out, we can do different things with that information that we typed in. For example, number 1 will be numbers. Number 2 is text. Number 3 is formulas. Number 4 is functions. And number 5 is something that I mentioned that we can use in calculations, which we call dates. So those are the 5 content types that we can have in Excel. When we talk about dates, since it's the most peculiar, I talk about this one first. We're going to say that in reality for Excel, a date is a numeric value that can be referenced to calculate results. So for example, in a simple spreadsheet like the one I'm drawing, you may have a date in A1, such as today's date, September 8, 25, and another date in the future in cell B1. So we can do some math, subtracting the earlier date from the later date, and that will give us a result. So for example, in cell in cell C1, we would spell out what I'm writing on the right, and we will see a result. We are going to type in cell C1, the cell references of B1 minus A1. So equals, we always start with an equal sign if it is a formula, and we say equals B1 minus A1. And when Excel uses that, it's going to do some math, as long as we have typed in the equal sign in front. It's very important to include the equal sign in front. Otherwise, for the computer, it will not be a formula, so it will not do any math. We are going to see B1 minus A1 if we forget to put the equal sign in front. The first thing that we type in will tell Excel whether what we type in is text or a formula or a function. And if it is a formula, like in this case, it will expect us to spell things a certain way. So when we have a formula, because it's preceded by the equal sign, B1 is going to be a cell reference that grabs the date in B1, such as September 8th. B1 is September 18, and it's going to subtract from it the date that is in A1, which is 9/8/25. The one address, one cell reference minus another cell reference will do the mathematical operation, and in this case, it's easy for us to notice that those two dates are 10 days apart. So when we type that in, equals B1 minus A1, and we press enter, we're going to see 10 as a result, which is the number of days between the two dates. So in business, we use mathematical operations quite frequently. So for example, to find out how many days until the next payment on a credit card will be. And you could set up a spreadsheet knowing that you have 25 days between payments, and have Excel tell you what the next payment, and the next payments will be, which is a way that credit card companies make more money by changing how many times we pay in the year. That's why they have alternating, they have different kind of due dates or time periods. They use 25-day cycles or 28-day cycles. It's because that day we don't have 12 payments, we will have more than 12. So let's see how we continue from here. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about when I turn over the page is going to be the next content data type. But in the meantime, before we move on to formulas and functions, let's talk about numbers. So numbers is something I mentioned the other day, that they can be formatted. And sometimes things look like numbers, but they're not numbers. So the format of a number, the same way that you have text that can be boldface, in italics, or underline, those are formats for text. But the same number, the value 1, can be formatted so it takes different appearances. It may look like a dollar with 2 decimals, so it will have the symbol. The number 1 converted to a percent looks like 100%. Or you can have the numeric value 1 with 4 decimals, because you need 4 decimal precision. Sometimes there are items that look like numbers, but they're not numbers. So for example, what happens if somebody types in the lowercase l followed by 2 uppercase O? It looks like the number 100. So one way to check if that is the numeric value 100 is try to apply a numeric format onto it. So if it looks like 100, but then it doesn't get formatted to currency, it is that it's not a number, it is text. Many times we could get passwords that are generated for us, and we have a hard time differentiating the circles between the number and the letter of uppercase O. So in computer science, we cross out the zeros to make sure that you understand that we're dealing with a number, and the letters will be without anything crossing them out. So in our spreadsheet, we have the spreadsheet for the final grade. Unfortunately, we reached the column O. So when we reference O, the column O, all the addresses starts with the uppercase O. And that's why it's a good idea to remember that cell references start with a letter. So that's something to remember when you're dealing with cell references. Text, you gotta be careful, because sometimes people combine the label with a number. So if you have something that is all put in one cell, such as grade colon 82, that even though it has a number, the 82 cannot be used in a calculation. So if the 82 will need to be used in a calculation, we need to make sure that we separate the label from the number. So we would use 2 cells rather than just 1. This is a common error when we have beginners dealing with Excel. We say type in the grade 82, and they do that. Okay. So I'm trying to remember what it is because I'm doing a voiceover because my recording didn't come through. So let's just leave it at that. That what matters is that we split up the label from the number. We normally need to have labels so we can understand what the values represent and organize the spreadsheet nicely for people to comprehend what's going on, but split it up so the label is in one cell and the number in another cell. That way, the cell reference for the value 82, which is the score, will be in B, whatever row that is. Now, if you have something like a course, like our course is MIS 2000, the 2000 will not be used in calculations. Then I also mentioned last class the difference between formulas and functions. Formulas are standard because math is the same throughout the world. So a student can learn in my country the rules of math, and then they can move to the States like I did, and we don't need to relearn the rules of math because mathematical rules or laws of math are universal, right? So when we code formulas, because formulas are mathematical expressions or mathematical equations, they will follow the universal rules of math, and they will work consistently in every program that you can use. As a matter of fact, a programmer can convert an equation that is used in Excel can be converted to a mathematical expression that is used in a program, and it will work. Now, functions is a different animal. So functions, they're not standard. They may work differently in different versions of the program. So they may work differently in a spreadsheet program in Windows. So in Excel, a certain function may work slightly different from the way it works in Numbers, which is the spreadsheet for Apple. So they're not standard. Functions are not standard because they may work differently and they may be spelled differently. So we need to get educated about what functions we have available in each program that we use. That's why it's very important in our course that everybody is using the same version of Excel at one point. Okay, so that's why we were trying to get ready last class with Office 365. The textbook is written for Office 365, and a lot of what we're going to be doing this semester is related to using functions in Excel. What am I trying to say there? Yeah, the functions are coded by the developers of the program you're using, so they may work slightly differently. And as you become more specialized within the degree of business, if you take accounting courses, for example, it could happen that there are different mathematical equations that can be used for the same concept, and you will not have control over which one was used by the developers. So we normally need to become a little bit more acquainted with the functions. So what do we do if we need to use functions in a course and you have moved on beyond this semester's course? So what you do is you search by category. The functions are categorized by the environment in which they work. So you would have financial functions, statistical functions, time functions, logarithmic functions, math functions, and they will all have the same format. A function will always start with the equal sign and will continue with the name of the function, and it will have parentheses. So for example, every program of the ones that I mentioned the other day, such as spreadsheets such as Excel or Numbers or Google Sheet, all of them will have these standard functions that I'm going to show you in a minute. Now, remember, they always have the same style of presenting them. Equal sign, the function name, and parentheses. Sometimes we have something in parentheses, sometimes we have other things expected in parentheses, because in parentheses, we set up the information that the function needs in order for it to give us a result. So these functions are listed here: the sum, the count, the average, the max, and the min. All of this in parentheses will need cells. So there are two ways in which we can represent the cells. One is called a range, and another one is called a list. So unfortunately, my notebook got cut off. So a range will have a colon to separate the first address from the second address. So something like A1 colon A5 will be all the cells that start at A1 and finish with A5. So it will be the A1, A2, A3, A4, and A5. From A1 to A5, everything in between as well. Now, something different is a list. A list is used normally when the cells are not adjacent to each other. So if instead of A1 to A5, I need to alternate and get every other cell, so A1, A3, A5, what I need to do is create what is called a list, like I'm writing right now. A1, comma, A3, comma, A5. So that's what we would put in parentheses to represent the list of cells. So comma separates individual cells. You can have as minimum as 2 cells that you add together, average out together, etc., and as many as a spreadsheet can be. A spreadsheet can be really large. So comma means only the cells that are listed. And so if we spell out equals sum, open parentheses, A1, comma, A5, it calculates the addition of the list of cells. In this case, is only A1 and A5. Only 2 cells are added together. But if instead of a comma, we use a colon to separate A1 and A5, that means a range. In this case, a vertical range. You know that it's vertical because the cells are in the same column. So it's a vertical line from A1 to A5 when you say A1 colon A5. How annoying that my notebook got chopped off here. Okay, so any of the functions that are listed there, they expect either a list of cells or a range of cells. Now, there are other functions that need different kind of information. So all of this require in parentheses either a range or a list of cells. But let's think about the square root. We don't calculate the square root of a bunch of numbers. We add a bunch of numbers. We calculate the square root of a single number. So something that you could code is equals SQRT, short for square root. And then in parentheses, you would spell out the cell that you need to calculate the square root of. So what the square root function expects is an expression that represents a single value. And there are other things besides a cell reference that can give you a single value, because whatever is in parentheses will be calculated first. So you can have a formula inside. So you can spell out, give me the square root. So equals SQRT of B2 minus A2. So what you have there is a formula. So equals square root of B2 minus A2. We'll calculate the subtraction first and then calculate the square root of that. Another thing you can put inside the parentheses is what we call a function. So you could spell out equals SQRT, open parentheses, SUM, sum, and in parentheses, A1 colon A5. So each one of the functions needs something in parentheses. So the sum of the addition of the values from A1 to A5 will be added together, and then the square root of that result will be calculated. And then after this, I'm going to show you that there are a couple of functions that do not need anything in parentheses. Okay, so the first group needs a range or a list of cells. The square root needs a single value. And then there are two functions that I'm going to show you today that do not need anything in parentheses. So the equals today function will give you today's date. Every time that you open the spreadsheet will give you in that cell the date that you're opening in that spreadsheet. So if you were to plug it in today, you will see September 8th, 2025, and you can change the format of that date so it also shows you the date with the words such as September 8th, 2025. So dates are considered numbers. They can be formatted with the numeric formats, and you can format a date so it looks like the month slash day slash 2025. You can make it so it includes the word of the month, or you can even include the weekday. So for example, you can type in your date of birth and you can format that date to include the weekday in the format, and you will find out what day of the week it was the day that you were born. I didn't know what day of the week I was born. Did you know what day of the week it was when you were born? So these are the notes.